Hey, Shalom Akim Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rachakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and that's what teaching this truth, and much peace, love, and salutation to the elect. Beginning with the 144,000, all the way down to the large multitude that believes and who the Lord will deliver in these last days. To you all I say Shalom. I'm the brother Tazama from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, coming back today with another lesson, and I pray this lesson will be edifying to the elect. I want to do a real quick lesson going in on this article that you see here. This is from endtimeheadlines.org. All right, endtimeheadlines.org, and it says, World Health Organization quietly coordinates large-scale simulation with 31 countries to prepare for the next pandemic. Let's read that again. World Health Organization quietly coordinates large-scale simulation with 31 countries to prepare for the next pandemic. All right, and this lines up with how the scripture says in the book of Micah, the 2nd chapter, it says, Woe unto them that devise iniquity, all right, and work evil upon their beds. When the morning is light, they practice it because it is in the power of their hand. All right, and they did the same thing when the first pandemic took place, so-called pandemic took place back in 2020. All right, and they had an event called Event 201. All right, as a matter of fact, let me see if I can actually pull that up real quick here. Just give me 1 second. Event 201. Right, Event 201. All right, it says Event 201, and this is from the AI overview. Event 201 was a high-level pandemic tabletop exercise hosted on October 18, 2019 by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum, all right, which we know the World Economic Forum just was commenced a few weeks ago, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, okay? And you had the likes of Bill Gates and, world leaders that pretty much simulated, which I might get the etymology of the word simulate as well, which they simulated an event, all right, of a viral outbreak in the particular actions, plan of actions that they would have to take if this particular outbreak happened, which it did a few months later. As you've seen, they did the event in October of 2019, and then the whole thing happened in 2020, and it happened quickly. All right, it says it simulated, or that word simulate again, it simulated a fictional C virus outbreak, all right, to highlight the need for global public-private cooperation in pandemic preparedness and response. All right, and when the whole pandemic took place at this time, you had a lot of draconian laws and things of that nature that came down the pipe because of that. You couldn't really travel freely. You had to wear a mask. You know what I'm saying? And then ultimately they mandated the whole jump shot after that, which coming down the line, you had a lot of people that got unalived, or rather say due to that. All right, because ultimately that was a shock test. That was a shock test to see how people would respond with draconian laws coming down the pipe. You see, that's all that was. The whole PDM was a shock test, and you see they're getting ready and they're planning something again. And we've been saying, all right, that they're getting ready, that they're gonna do another that another outbreak, quote unquote, is gonna happen. Okay, and you can read more. You can read more on the Event 201. All right, but I want to go back to that article here. Let's close that. Come here. Oh yeah, let's get the word simulate. All right. I want to get the etymology of the word simulate. All right, that's the word simulate. It says 1620s. It says feign, pretend, assume falsely the appearance of. You see that? So to simulate is to pretend or to assume falsely the appearance of. Okay? And what does the scripture say? The scripture says in Psalm 144, whose right hand is falsehood. Let's get that. This is Psalm 144, verse 11. It says, rid me and deliver me from the hand of strange children, whose mouth speaketh vanity, and their right hand is a right hand of falsehood. You see? So this is pretty much Esau, all right, showing forth his quote unquote prophecies of what he plans to do. You know, pretty much them saying and them simulating these events and coordinating these events, and then it happens. That's their form of saying, that's their form of fulfilling their prophecies on the left-hand side. You see? But their right hand is a right hand of falsehood. It's a right hand of deception. All right, that word falsehood is shaquar. All right. And it says here, it says lie, deception, disappointment, falsehood. All right, and he's the son of perdition. He's a liar and a deceiver. That's why we call him the devil, which the devil literally means deceiver, and Satan means adversary. All right, it says deception, what deceives or disappoints or betrays one. All right, deceit, fraud, wrong, fraudulently, wrongfully as adverb, falsehood, injurious in testimony. You see? And what does the scripture say? It says, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, therefore the kingdom is translated from one people to another. And this is exactly one of the reasons as to why the kingdom is going to be translated from the Edomites, all right, to the Israelites, due to all the deception, due to all the falsehood that takes place. Okay? It says falsity, of false or self-deceived prophets. And who are their self-deceived prophets on the left-hand side? They're so-called technocrats. You know, people like Bill Gates is nothing more than a small fry. All right, he's a small fry compared to the people that's really running the show. These elites, okay? Elon Musk, Sam Altman, Peter Thiel and Alex Karp, the CEOs of Palantir, and there's many more. Okay, Mark Zuckerberg, all these other individuals that are, implementing this whole AI technocracy, because all that they really want to do, they're bringing forth these events because Esau knows that his back's against the wall, his back is against the wall, and he's on the ropes. So the only thing that he can really do is bring forth another event to distract the masses of people again, whether it's going to be a so-called virus, whether it's going to be a so-called alien invasion, because you got the whole e-files and these people's names that are being put on, popping up on the e-files. And if and when I say e-files, you got to follow my drip, follow my drift. Okay, the Epps files. All right, and once again, Esau knows that his back's against the wall. So now what's he gonna do? He has to ultimately, bring forth events that's going to bring down more draconian laws and more draconian measures, because he knows that he's being exposed. So the only thing that he can really do is come down with the sword. Let's read this in the NLT. Actually, I want to read this in the I want to read this in the AEP, or AMP, excuse me. I know I got the AMP on here. I'm curious to see what the AMP says. I know the AMP is on here unless I'm tripping. I know it's on the website. Just bear with me, Baba Kasha. And if it ain't, okay, here you go. I gotta download it. All right, so let's see what the AMP says. Okay, so it says, set me free. All right, this is the AMP. It says, set me free and rescue me from the hand of hostile foreigners. All right, the hand of hostile foreigners. It says, set me free and rescue me from the hand of hostile foreigners, whose mouth speaks deceit without restraint. See, and they don't have no restraint in their bans. They don't have no restraint in the things that they say. The scriptures talk about how their tongue blasphemes the heavens. It says, and whose right hand is a right hand of falsehood. Okay. So simulate, going back, it says feign, pretend, assume falsely the appearance of, a back formation from simulation, or else from Latin simulatus, past participle of simulare, to make like, imitate, copy, represent, from the stem of similis, like, resembling, of the same kind. You see, so they're resembling what they did back in October of 2019. The meaning, use a model to imitate certain conditions for purposes or study or training. You see? And this is, once again, this is all really, all right, a psychological operation, a psyops. You see, simulation goes back to simulation, a false show, false profession. You see that? So a simulation is a false show or a false profession. Pretense. You know, and a pretense is like pre meaning before, then tense means like pretty much to show or to do something before it happens. To show, like, you know, a false pretense. It says pretense, and directly from Latin simulationem, from nominative simulatio, and imitating, feigning, false show, hypocrisy, imitate. You see? So it's an imitation, but it ultimately goes back to hypocrisy. That's why the scriptures call this devil, he's a forger of lies and he's a physician of no value. You see, he forges lies. He forges deception. Okay, so it says Joe Kovacs reported from World Net Daily that the World Health Organization, the WHO, in December quietly coordinated a large-scale international simulation exercise involving 31 countries and areas, officially framed by the WHO itself as getting ready for the next pandemic. Okay, getting ready for it. You see? And when they're getting ready for it, that means that what? They're conditioning the people into it. Because there's gonna, you know, you have something called now the Nipah. I think it's pronounced the Nipah, Nipah, the Nipah virus, or the Nipah virus, or something along those lines. That's in India. And they're saying that the fatality rate is between 40 and 70%. That's what they're saying. And then where did it come from? Make a wild guess where the virus came from. Bats. Sound very, very ironic, right? And it happens in India. But they said the same thing. They said the same thing when the whole virus happened back in 2020. It came from so-called China. It came from China, so-called, you know, from them eating bats and shit. And all of a sudden it came over here. And then they had all these videos on CNN of people just in hospitals and, you know, ventilators and things of that nature was breaking down and people was dying on ventilators. You know what I'm saying? All kinds of crazy shit, man. Which all that was really a show. All right. It says the simulation known as IHR exercise, the simulation known as IHR exercise crystal was not a tabletop discussion, but an extended live play. Okay, so it's an act, a live play event designed to test real-time responses to a hypothetical novel respiratory illness with global spread. Okay, sounds very, very similar to what we've seen, because there is going to be a grievous disease, or grievous diseases, I rather say, that's going to be out here in these last days that a lot of people are going to drop dead from. All right, this is Jeremiah 16 and 3. It says, "For thus saith Yahweh concerning the sons and concerning the daughters that are born in this place, and concerning their mothers that bear them, and concerning their fathers that begat them in this land, they shall die of grievous deaths." All right, when you get that word grievous here in the Hebrew, that word grievous is you got thach you have thach la'ayim. All right, thach la'ayim. It says diseases. So that word grievous deaths is grievous disease, death by disease, and disease literally means dis-ease, when your body's not at ease. Okay, so you got thach la'ayim, and that yum at the earl makes the yum at the end makes it plural. All right, then the root word is a chala. It says to suffer, be sick, be dis-ease, and you have a lot of people, all right, who took the activation, the activation juice back in 2020 when they mandated it, and people got, feared, people got forced and coerced into taking, the jump shot. And also too, you had the ISUPK, all right, that was promoting the jump shot by their leaders, General Yohana, Captain Tazariak, and all these individuals at the ISUPK that was promoting the whole jump shot. So they're gonna have a lot to pay for, man. Because we believe that with this whole next event that's gonna happen, you're gonna have a lot of these people that got activated. I rather said a lot of people that got the juice are gonna get activated, and there's gonna be something that they're gonna put in the air, whether it's gonna be a particular frequency, that's gonna start having a lot of people drop dead, man. Okay. So it says to suffer, be sick, be diseased. It says the primitive root, which is a chala, it says to be or become weak, be or become sick, be or become diseased, be or become grieved, be or become sorry. And you're gonna have a lot of people that's gonna feel sorry, for taking that juice. Now Lord willing, Yahweh Bashem Shah keeps his hand over us, because it's going to be a lot of death, man. It's going to be a lot of people that's going to be dropping dead around you. The scripture says, let me get this. Let me get this in Psalm 91. Because, hey, man, we coming to the time where it's going to start getting real. It's going to start getting real deadly out here, man. All right. Psalm 91 and 5, it says, thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day. All right, and that terror by night can be a disease. But the arrow ultimately, the ultimate destruction is going into the missiles. That's the arrow that flies by day. It says, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. You see that? You're gonna have a lot of people that's gonna be dropping dead, man. A lot of death. You see, and it's going to be a lot of death by disease. You're going to have a lot of death by famine. People just, and they're not going to be buried, as we're going to continue reading. All right, here in Jeremiah 16, it says, for thus saith Yahweh concerning the sons and concerning the daughters that bore the, let me read that again. For thus saith Yahweh concerning the sons and concerning the daughters that are born in this place, and concerning their mothers that bear them, and concerning their fathers that begat them in this land. They shall die of grievous deaths. And we just got that word grievous. All right. It says they shall not be lamented, neither shall they be buried. All right. Remember, they bought all those coffins that can fit, I want to say that those coffins can fit between like 10 to 20 bodies, if I'm not mistaken. I'm talking about big coffins. There's hundreds and thousands of them. It says, but they shall be as dung upon the face of the earth, and they shall be consumed by the sword and by famine. See that? And they're going to be dung upon the face of the earth, meaning that what? They're just going to be buried. Or they're not going to be buried, man. They're going to have to be burned. It says, and their carcasses shall be meat for the fowls of heaven and for the beasts of the earth. See that? That's what's coming. Okay. Back to the article. It says, while pandemic preparedness exercises are a recommended part of public health planning, the lack of broad public awareness and the use of language emphasizing the next global pandemic has prompted intense discussion about global health strategy, sovereignty, and what future epidemic action might look like. You see that? They practice these things in darkness. They commune of laying snares privily. You see that? Why was this not, openly talked about? Because they do their things in secrecy. It says the drill lasted weeks and involved operational responses, including real world systems like airports and border security. Governments were tasked with responding to alerts, verifying information, right? Governments were tasked with responding to alerts. How are they going to respond with alerts? They're going to respond with the military, verifying information, right? They're going to verify. They got to verify your information, right? And that's why you think that the whole digital ID and the real ID is getting ready to go live, and coordinating across agencies in real time. testing decision making under pressure. See, and it's going to be decision making under pressure, and it's going to be the pressure is going to be what? Them moving fast. So with the more pressure is going to come more draconian laws. It's going to come with more authoritative action. Okay? It says the World Health Organization promoted the exercise on social media as a readiness drill for future health emergencies. And you just had recently the United States that pulled out of the World Health Organization. I wonder why. I find that very ironic too. These kinds of simulations aim to identify gaps in international coordination long before an actual pandemic emerges. You see that? Long before it. When the morning is light, they practice it. They devise it, and then they practice it. You see, a practice many public health experts see as essential. The World Health Organization itself emphasizes preparedness as part of its mandate, helping countries develop surveillance, right, response mechanisms, and collaborative frameworks that can save lives when the outbreak occurs. You see? But it's not necessarily them saving lives. It's them creating the event. All right. And then they have what? They have a solution behind it. You have problem, reaction, solution. Okay. Matter of fact, let's get another precept. Let's get Proverbs 4 and 16, I think it is. Yep, this is Proverbs 4 and 16. It says, for they sleep not, except they have done mischief, except they have done wickedness, man. So these devils don't even go to sleep unless they've caused some to fall. As it says here, it says, and their sleep is taken away unless they cause some to fall. And that's how these devils operate, man. Okay, let's read this in the AMP. It says, for the wicked cannot sleep unless they do evil. And they are deprived of sleep unless they make someone stumble and fall. And that's what they do on a day-to-day basis. Okay. They don't get rest until they cause someone to stumble and fall, or until they cause, a death, or they cause mass deception, mass lies. That's what they get off on. Why do you think they got the news media? The news media is just a big platform where they can just perform and promote lies, man. And they got people wrapped into it. They got the average American, all right, wrapped into, CNN, Fox News, CNBC, MSN, and we understand and know that, for the most part, people ain't even, well, I'd rather say you got a lot of like older bottles that still watch the news. The mainstream media, all right, the mainstream medium, the mainstream witchcraft, you know what I'm saying? But a lot of the news that people really get on the truth of the fact of the matter is these alternative news nations, these alternative news stations, man, these alternative media stations. Okay, these kinds of simulations aim to, I already read that. It says, as the world marks 6 years since the C-19 pandemic first erupted, the World Health Organization has publicly asked whether the world is better prepared for new global health threats. In a statement released just days before the WND article, the WHO acknowledged programs in strengthening preparedness, but cautioned that gains remain fragile and uneven, and work more. I'm saying backwards, Salaki, man. My eyes see words backwards sometimes. And more work is needed to keep populations safe. But mind you, they're using the guise of peace and safety. They'll use the guise of peace and safety, and then what? Sudden destructions are going to come upon them. All right, it says globally coordinated exercise like IHR Exercise Crystal fit within this broader context of preparedness. Testing operational readiness across borders. Border control. Many shall desire to go into a city, but shall not be able, as is written, right? Enhancing information sharing among nations. And how are they going to share information? They're going to share more information via. It's going to first go with the digital ID, and then ultimately it's going to become a physical chip. All right. Stress testing systems that would be crucial in the early stages of any outbreak. Okay. Why are some watching closely? The language used by the WHO and the quiet nature of the announcement, publicized more through social media posts than major press releases, right? and this is why they want to get rid of most social media platforms, has fueled debate among policymakers, analysts, and commentators. Some argue these preparations are prudent, reflecting hard-learned lessons from the C-19, early detection, quick coordination, and practiced responses can significantly reduce the human and economic toll on future pandemics. Others raise questions about transparency, national sovereignty, and once again, mind you, the United States of America recently just got out of the World Health Organization. But what does that mean, though? That means that America can pass its own sovereignty rights, or pass its own sovereignty laws, I'd rather say, on this event, on this disease, that they can pass their own legislation and rule on how they counteract this quote unquote disease. Hey, this devil about to hey, Esau getting ready to get down, man. We've been warning y'all. All right, it says others raise questions about transparency, national sovereignty, and the extent of international authority in health emergencies. You see that? Especially in a world where agreements such as the WHO pandemic agreement have been under scrutiny. That agreement, adopted by member states in 2025 to enhance global coordination on pandemic prevention and response, explicitly affirmed the sovereignty right of states to legislate and enforce domestic health policy while creating frameworks for collaboration. Because there's going to be another round of juices that's going to come around again. And these other rounds of juices that's going to come around, it's going to come with more forced laws behind it. Watch. All right. And the scripture says that we are not ignorant of Satan's devices. Okay. So this simulation that they're doing is nothing more than a pretext of what they're getting ready to do. All right. So we got to keep our eyes open on this. It's our job to blow the trumpet and to be watchmen as Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua commanded us. All right. I pray that this lesson is edifying to the elect once again. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Chakwadash. Double honors to the apostles, bishops, and elders of Great Millstone who taught us his truth and that's what teaching his truth. And much peace, love, and salutations to the elect. Until next time, Lord willing, I say shalom.